Welcome to another episode of the Project Flux podcast. I'm your host, James Garner, joined by my co-host, Yoshi Sornak. Today we have a really special guest. It's Greg Lawton of Nodes and Links. So Greg is a friend and is a real innovative mind in the whole AI and project management space. He also co-hosts the Beyond Deadlines podcast with Micah Peepo. Michael, we've had on the podcast earlier. It really is a fantastic podcast if you haven't listened to it already. In this episode, Greg shares the journey of Nodes and Links, a company he co-founded with a mission to revolutionize project management through AI. They aim to augment the capabilities of project managers, turning ambitious ideas into reality. So Greg explains how Nodes and Links leverages AI to forecast project outcomes and enhance efficiency, drawing parallels to many other historical technological revolutions like the industrial and computer revolutions that came before. We also discussed the importance of having a contrarian viewpoint and how this early belief in AI's potential set Nodes and Links apart. Greg emphasizes that AI's real value is in automating and enhancing the paperwork and the decision-making processes crucial to project management. This automation, Greg argues, will be as revolutionary for office work as the internal combustion engine was for physical labor. We also explore the broader implications of AI in project management, touching on the necessity of combining AI with sound business principles to drive success. We delve into Geoffrey Hinton's perspective on universal basic income, discussing his view that governments must consider it as AI continues to advance and reshape the workforce. So stay tuned for an insightful discussion that not only covers advancements in AI, but also provides a deep understanding of how these technologies are reshaping the landscape of project delivery. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review in your chosen podcast player, as it really helps us to spread the message to more people. Enjoy the episode. Hi everyone. Today we have Greg Lawton of Nodes and Links with us. Thank you so much for joining us, Greg. It's a real pleasure to have you on the show.
Real pleasure to be here. James, you and I have been friends for quite a long time. I'm happy I finally got an invite.
Well, there you go. We were saving up, we knew it would be a special moment, and we're dearly happy to have you here. And it has been a while. I mean, it's surprising. I was trying to work out, it's probably been a couple of years where we've been talking and chewing the cud over some of these topics. So it's great to talk to you for one of these podcasts. Hopefully it won't be the last as well.
Well, hopefully I won't make a fool of myself on your podcast. I don't know how you're editing this.
Don't worry, we can edit anything you want. But we've got loads to cover. Again, it's been another week with lots of big stories around the AI world. But I just wanted to start with you a little bit about Nodes and Link. I mean, you do a lot with your time. You're quite prolific with the amount of posts you get out there, and then you do a fantastic podcast with Micah as well, called Beyond Deadlines. So you do a lot with your time. But just to focus on Nodes and Link, that focuses really on enhancing project management through AI. So can you sort of, just for the listeners, share some examples of where your solutions have actually improved project outcomes for clients?
Sure. Like to really understand this, you'll have to actually wind it back. And it's like Nodes and Links is a business that was set up with a specific purpose in mind. It's not a business because anybody needed a job. It's a business that was there to change something in the world, and we actually raised venture capital to have the ambition to be able to do that. And the simple thing is, about half a decade ago, myself and my co-founder Christos saw the emergence of artificial intelligence and saw what it was going to do to the value creation process of office-based roles, and thought to ourselves, forget the negative. We're about to have the largest explosion in workforce power that will be the next catapult. So, we had the Industrial Revolution, and then, before that, the Farming Revolution, and then we've had the Computer Revolution and the Pharma Revolution, and all of these revolutions.
It's the Chondria cycle, whatever it's called.
Exactly. It's the real. This is the next one, and we thought, okay, well, if we can suddenly explode the amount of project managers in the world from 20 million to 200 billion, imagine you took it up, millions of times. Would that benefit humanity? Well, humanity doesn't actually have enough people to do the projects it wants to do. So we were like, yeah. So actually, what Nodes and Links isn't a business by the definition of a business. A business is there to reap the benefits of a business model. Nodes and Links is a startup in that it is there to experiment and find the global optima of a hypothesis. And that hypothesis is that AI can augment human project managers to the betterment delivery of projects. Actually, an experimental organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And going, a lot of people, it may sound obvious now with everything that's going on, but when did you make this hypothesis? A few years. I mean, what was around at that
6
time?
years ago. Six
Yeah,
years
so
ago. Yeah, it was
you know,
2018 when we came up with this, and you just have to. It's betting on what can be perceived as an inevitable change in the world before the rest of the world believes it's inevitable. It's the definition of a contrarian viewpoint. A contrarian viewpoint is not the opposite of what the general people think. The best contrarian viewpoints is a strong belief about something that the world has yet to form an opinion on.
Well, I mean, if you go back, however, 6 years ago, this was not mainstream stuff in terms of, the press getting involved with it. And I remember that was around the time I read The Singularity is Near by Ray Kurzweil. And I started to talk about some of those concepts, and people looked at me like I was mad. So how did you have the same sort of reaction? Like, this guy's, off the
of course. Like someone said something to me the other day. One of our advisors, he said, the only difference between a heretic and a messiah is about 18 months.
Yeah.
And it's true. Like when we started out, I talked about how we can use algorithms to forecast and how we could use. I actually talked about it as imagine it was governance as a service, and I pitched. Imagine if you had a butler at work that could do work for you. And lots of people were like, I don't really get it. We started developing and showing people AI, and then it was kind of like, oh, I'm starting to get it. And in reality, the movement from heretic to messiah happened because of ChatGPT. Like as soon as the world saw that, we were getting phone calls. We weren't calling people. We were getting phone calls because we'd spent 5 years developing AI specifically for project controls with users. So it was like, I want this ChatGPT, but I want it to write project controls reports. And it was like, well, here you go. And we didn't have to explain anything anymore. It was just, there it is. Do you want it?
Yeah, it was definitely a game changer. It was the kind of thing that happens where all of a sudden you can have the conversation with your parents about it, and your children, and that event, I think, will go down. People will look back at that as a pivotal milestone where people realise, okay, this stuff is real. And I remember just before ChatGPT came out, there was lots of news articles around Google's. I think they were talking about Google's one working on something where this is almost sentient, and where are we going with this? And people were dismissing it at that point. But do you feel vindicated? Like, do you feel like all that hypothesis you made and those predictions you made when people were thinking you were crazy at the beginning, does it give you a feeling of, what feeling does it give you?
No, like it's being proved right is not the objective. Finding truth is the objective. I'm a scientist. I'm a physicist. I've been right about a couple of things, and I've been wrong about a whole lot more things. Being right or wrong doesn't carry value. Learning what truth is and evolving your thinking and your model of the world to better deliver value in the world, that's the objective. So it was just another step in the process. It was like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, cool. Next thing. Yeah, and at any one point in time, we've got 3 hypotheses that we're building and testing, from major ones to minor ones. It just so happened that the overarching hypothesis of AI will revolutionize project controls, that turned out to be correct, but everything is correct in generalities.
Yeah. That's how far you take it.
Exactly.
But it's interesting because coming from that physicist background, what was your kind of what made you focus on project delivery and project management?
So I did astrophysics at university, specifically cosmology, which is basically just a bunch of modeling. Like you can model stuff really well. And then I became a systems engineer on the nuclear submarines, so on the design and build of them. So I went into BA systems, and I was doing engineering and system requirements, and learnt all about requirements design, the system engineering, spiral development processes, all of this. And then just by my nature, got really interested in the business element. Because if you think about it, a business is just another model. You've got actions you do that pull resources in. You transform those resources into other resources, and then you put them out the other side to generate resources that go back in the top of the funnel. And if you do it well, the output generates more of the input. And it's like this. It's almost like playing a game. It's like playing Factorio or something like this. So I got really into that, and to the point where I got really into deeply understanding how projects make money. And actually, this is something I found was unbelievably rare.
Not many do.
Vast majority, even senior people, don't truly understand all the models that the project industry uses to make profit. They know their niche ones that they've experienced and have perfected or got good at, but they don't know the wider spectrum. So I studied that just by interviewing as many project directors and commercial people and supply chain people as possible. Then I went into strategy on mergers and acquisitions, and then I went back into I did project management. And the reason why I did project management is because on the specific projects I was working, project management was the role that I needed to do to maximize the cash and profit. And I won't go into the specific techniques here, but I made a lot of money.
Yeah.
And
you showed how to do it right, presumably.
Pardon?
You showed how to do it right.
Yeah, well, it's just you just come up with your hypotheses, and you run and test them to see, and you iterate very quickly to see what will fly, and then you create models that then become repeatable and scalable. And in the scaling of these models is where you generate a large amount of cash. And one was change requirements, where we'd more thoroughly assess the impact on non-critical elements like subcritical paths and the contract and the assumptions and dependencies and exclusions to get risk off our books into the client or the supply chain whilst holding the risk contingency on our books. So it's essentially pure profit at that point. It's just that no one's noticed that clause 12 relates to clause 73. So it's like this just deep understanding of the contract. And it's there. I was working with Future Technology at the Future Technologies lab. Like I built elements of that, which exposed me to artificial intelligence properly. I was running these contracts, which meant that I really understood how many man hours I plowed into certain things, and to be honest, how inefficient the entire project delivery process is.
Well, I mean, there's some scary stats on that. I saw one stat from the UK that shows that we are less productive as an industry than we were in 1997. It's actually gone down.
Yeah, I'm going to have to analyse what they mean by productive really deeply there.
Greg, would you say that this was an example of following first principles? Do you think this is how it's helped you to understand project management?
Yeah, I just try and look at everything in the world as first principles. I don't always achieve it because the world's a really hard place. But this was fundamentally first principles of project management. What I found is that if you deeply look at a subject like project management from very, very first principles, and you'd have to find a niche to be able to dive very deeply.
Yeah.
You can actually become a world expert incredibly quickly because people don't do that. No. I'm writing a book at the moment called How to Accelerate Large Capital Projects. And I've tested it with a couple of people. I've identified 8 different major methods of acceleration in projects, but the models, the equations behind them, I'll share the draft with you guys.
Yes,
but you'll just look at it and go, well, duh. Then why has no one written them down before? Come on.
People are so stuck, there's these processes where a very arcane kind of industry, and people just would prefer to tread the path that they've always done rather than try something different, even if it's the definition of madness, isn't it? You're just going
I would actually counter that. I'm not as nihilistic. I think it's about serendipity. And my favorite word is serendipity. That's my favorite word. And my dog is called Dippy. Okay? Serendipity.
You were determined to get that word in the podcast today.
Yeah, it's the emergence of a beneficial action due to a series of fortunate events that you have contributed to do. So, for example, there's not many first principle physicists who look and try to deeply understand the business models of projects. What I've done isn't special. It's just that I'm in a market of very few people who've decided to do that.
Yeah, and you were early as well.
So it's
How early is early? Project management's been around for 2,000 years.
Yeah, but you're combining it with AI. Well, what you've done
Now,
you're
yes,
unique,
nodes
is
and links, yes.
Yeah.
But I'm talking like that book. That book could have been written 50 years ago. It's just never been written, for my knowledge.
But do you think this is now an opportunity to start changing that? By utilising both good principles and AI. Where do you see project management going in the next decade?
Okay, so that's a really, really big question. So
Oh.
really big question. But let me unpack it, because you asked about AI, and I'll give my honest view. When I give workshops or lectures about AI and project management, project controls, that kind of thing, I don't go into detail and explain all the AI technology. I basically say this: a technology disrupts an industry when that technology can effectively hit at the heart of the value creation mechanism. And I'll give you some examples. Banking, the internet. The value creation mechanism of the finance sector is the transferring of money. Money used to be paper. Is it easier to transfer money via the internet versus transferring it in a van? Okay, so did the internet transform banking?
Yes.
Okay, marketing. The job of marketing is to get as many eyeballs to look at a single thing as possible. Did internet coupled with social media revolutionize marketing?
It did, but not necessarily all for good. There's a lot.
Doesn't matter about good. Doesn't matter about good or bad. Doesn't matter. The world works how the world works, not how we want the world to work. The world works because of incentives. Another one, a question. Okay, let's think about construction now. Did the internet revolutionize construction?
It hasn't massively changed the process, no.
Why?
Well, there's
what is the value creation mechanism in construction?
It's actually creating and building the
physical
assets, whatever that may be.
Exactly. So the internet does it. Okay. Does social media, has that revolutionized construction?
No, it's enabled you to spread the word. I mean, all these technologies have helped, but it hasn't revolutionized.
Exactly. So there's a difference. There's a difference between a revolutionizing technology and just it helped its in passing technology. Yeah. Okay. Another one, crypto, blockchain. Has that revolutionized construction?
Not yet.
No.
Not yet.
I think that has got huge potential, especially when you talk about
I know you do, but it'll have to get to the point where it hits at the heart of the value creation mechanism. Yeah. AI. What is the value creation mechanism in projects? Yeah. And this is a trick question.
What the actual value creation is the project itself. But
there's only two value creation mechanisms in projects.
So the project's one, presumably. The actual physical asset.
The physical build, yes.
Yeah. And the second one is the use you get out of it, the benefit. So if it's a hospital,
it's operational use.
No, that's not a project, because a project is a one-off endeavor.
It's
that
beyond
is
the project,
operational.
Yes.
Yeah, that's beyond the cycle.
Yeah.
The first one is what you said, which is the physical asset. The second is paperwork.
Oh, so the information.
Consultancies make millions to produce paperwork.
Effectively the data. Right, the
data. Well, you can have it's reports, it's audits, it's financial statements, it's designs.
That just disappears at the end of a project.
Doesn't matter. Okay, what does AI automate?
Yeah, the creation of those reports.
The latter.
Okay, so is AI going to be a revolutionary technology in project management?
Well, you're preaching to the converted here. I think with Yoshi and I think it will. And then when you take that in conjunction with the other technologies, such as blockchain, such as 3D printing that we're going to talk about later, there's going to be a revolution on site as well, I believe.
Yeah, so you're exactly right. So there's two you've got to think about this. The value creation method is physical and paperwork, essentially.
Yeah.
We call that digital, but it's really about paperwork. The value of unit is the report. You could almost, as a consultancy, sell reports because it's such a condensed value unit. That is essentially what AI is. That so coming full circle to the main question you asked me, which is how is AI going to revolutionize project management? AI is an automation technology, just like all technologies in the world. The combine harvester is an automation scaling technology. It takes 30 people working with scythes in a field and turns it to one person. One person can do the job of 30. That's that is the reason why we went from 95% of the world's population's farming to 5%. Cool, it's worked. Even the internet in banking, that's a scale mechanism. It used to take X amount of resources to send money between people. Now it takes a lot less than X amount of resources. It's a button click.
Yeah. So
here, what we've got is
impact.
AI will massively increase the productive capacity of people in producing paperwork. Now, hopefully, that paperwork is going to be targeted as opposed to a new mountain. Because a new mountain is what happened when the internet allowed blog people and newspapers to write.
That's come out. I don't know if you've heard of it. They're calling slop, where you get this generated stuff. There's lots of it, but it's just rubbish.
But then, Greg, do you see? So you said there's two value mechanisms. You said so project and then the paperwork that comes. So do you see them two things as being distinct?
Of course, they're distinct.
Yeah.
What's a contract written on?
Yeah, but if you're referring to things like design, for instance, the design will inform the project itself.
Yeah, they're linked.
Of course, they're interlinked. They go together. It's like the heart and the lungs. One can't exist without the other. But let's make no mistake. Before we talked about what's the true value, the business model of projects and the value creation mechanism, the thing that generates money is not the project. The thing that generates money is the contract and paperwork that proves that you did the project.
Yeah.
The paper is the ultimate cache of the value. So you can create as much value as you want outside, but if you do not have the audit trail and the paperwork and the contract to back it up against, you will not get paid. Yeah. So that they are two very distinct things, to the point where if you want to make as much money on projects as possible, the one place you should focus is the paperwork, because it's more infinitely scalable than the outside work.
And I read somewhere that like the typical project generates 15,000 pages of paperwork or something ridiculous.
It'll be enormous. But I'm talking here about as a single individual. As a single individual, if you want to add the maximum amount of value possible, value being defined by monetary creation for the business, then the areas in which you have to become a specialist in are contract, schedule, cost, procurement, and risk.
So the same things that you've always had to be an expert in project profession.
Yeah, nothing's changed. Nothing's changed.
Nothing's changed. Delivering it quicker, delivering it better, more accurately.
Unbelievably more precise. I think probably the thing that I'm preaching here is a very deep understanding of business applied to projects. Yeah. So we've spoke many times about the one piece of information that the vast majority of people in projects have never been educated in, which would increase their value by 10x, is the knowledge of business.
Yeah.
And
so that kind of the people who say or get that fear that AI is going to take their jobs, that goes against that, doesn't it? You still need people. You might not need as many people doing the grunt work, as it were, but you still need someone with an inherent understanding.
Sometimes. So let me be very, very precise. AI is an automation technology. Automation technologies work on tasks. Combine harvester, I need to harvest this. It doesn't think about the crops. It doesn't measure the weather. It doesn't plant seeds. It harvests. Yeah. It's a task. Tasks are meaningless in themselves unless they're stitched into workflows. Yeah. Workflows are designed to achieve an outcome.
Yeah.
Roles, which is what we give humans, because a human is not a role, but a human does a role. Roles are designed around responsibilities. Responsibilities are delivered via workflows, and workflows comprise of tasks. In British law, if you change someone's job by more than 40%, it is a different job. And this is how companies make people redundant and this kind of thing. But I would say, if the sum of all the tasks that you do, if more than 40% of those can be fully automated to be honest, because you're not adding much value, it's just a repetitive nature of the work, the likelihood is that job will be erased.
Yeah.
But
You still need
if
someone
it's
to drive
less
the
than
car, aren't there?
40%, or if the workflows involved have complex stitching of tasks and decision making between tasks, that role will be augmented.
Yeah.
And so the answer to your question is incredibly specific.
Yeah, and actually, one of the first times we met, you gave me that analogy, and you talked about workflows changing. That was a real light bulb moment for me, because I think that's exactly what's going to happen. I can see not just project management, but surveying
Exactly.
and
Business is not,
flows.
and I'm going to say, you have to take this with a pinch of salt.
Yeah,
The operations of business are not about people. The operations of business are about value creation. Value creation is segmented into roles, and roles are given to people.
absolutely.
That step matters. That step really matters.
Greg, would you say then the power of AI is in its ability to enhance that reporting element? It's the
Oh,
paperwork.
many elements. It's everything to do with paperwork and decision making. It's office work. So what AI is to the office is what the engine, the combustion engine, was to muscle-based work, like laborious work. So, like, think of all industries. Think of construction. So the outdoor. What was construction like before you had diggers and cranes and bulldozers?
Yeah.
Like the internal combustion engine has done to outside what AI is going to do to inside. AI is one in the history of humanity. I don't know how to count, but I would imagine that over 90% or 95% of all technologies that humanity has invented have been muscle automation.
Mm-hmm.
AI is one of the very first technologies which is mind automation. That's why it's so revolutionary.
Well, the internet was probably the first one, like the web. That was a precursor to it.
No, that was mine. That was muscle automation, because otherwise you'd have to walk to the person to talk to them.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you've got to think about the substitute. If I want to achieve the objective, what's the substitute? Not what's the competition, the substitute. The only other ones that have automated mine, the abacus, memory, writing, calculators, computers running calculations.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been very slow. If you could put a lot, but very slow, and then AI. AI is the first one that is actually very scalable.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see in the next 6 years. To me, I think we're going to see. I've always got this 2030 sort of time frame in my mind where I think we're going to see fundamental.
Oh, you're gonna. I tell you what, like, I'm not measuring this in 5 years. I'm like, measure this in the time of a career. Think about this. So let's say a career is 40 years. Let's say we're halfway through now. So by 2040, and the career would have started in 2000. In 2000, Google was just getting started. Facebook was just getting started. We had the early dial-up modem internets. The first smartphone was about to be released. And at 2040, you're genuinely going to have AI machine workers that just talk to you and do work for you. Like, that's if you take the shift before, you're going back to 1960, that's people going into an office looking very, very smart, all the way up to everyone has computers. Like, that's going to be, in 1,000 years, I think humanity is going to look back on these 200 years and just go, and that is when the hockey stick happened for humanity. Yeah.
I mean, Greg, I've one more question for you. It's kind of a bit of a segue. But you mentioned, so with AI, it's very task focused, right? So it achieves, accomplishes the task. Now, how does this form of AI I'm picturing here relate to something like world modeling, for instance? So with world modeling, you're looking at it more holistically. What's your definition of word modeling? So with world models, I look at it as measuring changes over time, but then leveraging AI to understand different data points across the holistic system to then understand that world in its current state and its future state. Okay, let me give you an example. So you've got a series of variables, and you want to understand and predict the future based on the understanding of these variables without a deterministic equation. That's essentially what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the task is to run a linear regression or a multivariate analysis to be able to come up with the correlatory measures. So, for example, the R-squared measures, to understand how these variables relate to each other.
cool, I could give that task to a data scientist. That is a task. Run a linear regression or run a multivariate analysis to understand correlations between these factors. It's just a task. A data scientist, they submit timesheets. They do that. They also structure data. They do a bunch of stuff. It's just a task.
Yeah.
If you can explain it as a task, so if you say, I want to do this, imagine you're talking to a person and go, well, what are the 5 things I need you to do? Those are the tasks. You could just ask AI, please run a multivariate analysis on this data and tell me the correlation in terms of R squared between these 5 data points.
As you would with a project program or a cost.
Yeah, easy. Yeah. To be honest, which is a lot of how we do our forecasts. When we say to the AI, like, forecast this project, what I'm actually saying is, please go and look for all variables within the data provided, understand how they correlate with this specific component, which is predictability plus the critical path method. So in terms of the ability for this to move this milestone, and then classify those activities, and then classify the activities in the future and apply the same performance indicators to those, replan, and then tell me when this project will finish. That's how you do intelligent forecasting.
So would you then say AI would struggle with something like abstract reasoning, where the context or the information it has isn't that familiar, it's not well versed. So when it tries to then extrapolate or answer,
it's an incredibly hard question to answer, because it's a generalist question. We call, when AI makes wrong answers, we call it hallucination. But when a human makes wrong answer, it's just a mistake.
Yeah,
it's kind of the same thing. What I'd say is, you need to be very careful with what is a temporary challenge versus what is a fundamental challenge. Understanding context is a temporary. Well, people saying, oh, well, let's think of the history of AI. First, people were like, well, no one can beat a human chess master. It's just creative. They can see, okay, well, then AI did that. Okay, well, Go is a much harder game. AI will never beat someone at Go. Well, it did that. Okay, well, we can find our bastions in the creative arts, like songwriting and essay writing. And okay, well, AI is now doing that. It might not be as good as the best people, but I tell you what, it is far cheaper and far faster than 99% of everyone.
Well, it's funny,
so it's almost like, where's the end bastion? And to me, the end bastion is physical contact. You've got to think about this, like, let's think the entire economy. What is an economy? An economy is people agreeing to do stuff for other people. Every starting point and end point of an economy is a person. There isn't anything else. The economy is just the route that people take to get to each other. So, I do projects, so people pay me money, and then I go to the bakery and get bread. I'm the farmer who farms the wheat and sells it. It stops me having to go and do all that.
Well, it reminds me of that analogy of money. If everyone paid off their debts, there'd be no need for money, because there is nothing.
There absolutely, exactly, but there absolutely would be, because people trade future favors for present favors. That is the definition. That is the definition of like a society, plus some other definitions. But if you think about this, about the economy, well, what would a scale technology do? Well, just ask what any scale technology's ever done. Ask what an engine's done. Ask what the internet's done. What it does is it just creates an increase in the amount of productivity of a general economy, which fundamentally creates more wealth in terms of standard of life, which is then captured based on the mechanisms of the industry. So if you're in a totalitarian regime, the top ones are going to capture all of that for themselves. If you're in a much more democratized economy, general people's lifestyles will increase. For example, ours. It's pretty cool that we've got vaccines, isn't it? That's awesome. Like, that's good. So
why do I say that?
I think about it like that. So no, the AI will not take over. I'm putting aside, the whole Terminator style. AI will not take over, because at some point, some people will be so marginalized that someone will put a bomb through a data center. And I don't mean like a terrorist. I mean, a state will just drop a bomb from a fighter jet and it goes, AI's gone. And, they talk about this in the Dune books, but at no point think that AI dominates humans. The start of an economy and the end of an economy is humans.
Yeah.
Humans decide what humans do, and humans are an incredibly aggressive species.
Yeah.
So at some point, if something goes against us, someone's getting bombed.
Well, this is a good point to go. There's a few stories I want to touch on before the end. And there was a really interesting one from Jeffrey Hinton, who's ex-Google, I think. And he said in an interview with BBC, I think, that his guess is between 5 and 20 years from now, there's the probability that half of what we do will be taken over by AI. And
cool.
He said, so he talks about a solution to this problem, which is universal basic income. And I think Elon Musk also talks about it recently.
Yeah.
We've got to get our heads around the fact that governments might have to start thinking about paying people to not work. I mean, what's your view on that?
Well, governments do that nowadays, but I actually think that this is a very, very interesting idea. I need to think about it a lot more deeply about the economics. But the key, the kind of thing is, why are we working? You got to kind of think about that. Why are we working? Why do we go to work? And as a holistic
most
question.
Survival is to earn money to put.
But why? Like, we already produce far more food than we need. We already have far more energy than we need. Like, why do we go to work if we have all of the resources to, if we all, it's the prisoner's dilemma. That's the answer. It's because if everyone agreed, chill out, we're just going to work as much as we need to, and it'd have to be everyone in the world, then we could probably all scale back to like 2 hours a day, because it's like, it's chill, guys. It's chill. But then someone won't do that, and it becomes a competitive
It's human
environment.
nature. It's human nature.
It's human nature, which, again, the world doesn't work how we want it to work. The world works how it works.
If you go back to the 50s and 60s, there was all these kind of predictions that, we have loads of leisure time. We've got all this amazing technology, but we're probably all working hard.
So this is the thing. AI will automate a significant amount of stuff because of that competitiveness on a global scale. It is unacceptable for people to sit around and do nothing and be consumers as opposed to producers or transformers. I will say transformers are like producers. A producer is like a farmer, actually produces stuff. A transformer takes potatoes and turns them into a more valuable product like chips. You're creating value, but it's just a transforming thing. And a perfect example of that would be, the person who digs the lithium out of the ground and then the person who transforms it into a computer chip. Still very valuable parts of process. So because of that global competitive pressure and because of driven by human nature, it would be just unfeasible for people to sit around and do nothing. Therefore, roles are not people, roles will be created to put those people to work, and incentives will be designed in the economy such that is the natural decision of the population, and the skill sets required for those roles will flow back through, because when those roles are rare, you'll get paid a lot, and then as people flood in, it will balance from demand and supply. So to be honest, this is, we're not living, this is not nothing in history ever is new. It's just redone a different way. So for example, I'd be like, okay, when the engine came in, or when the spinning jenny came in, what happened to all the people knitting? Pretty sure they still managed to find jobs to put food on the table. Okay, when the engine came in, what happened to all the, those canal drivers that used to use horses? Okay, now the big question for me though, so putting all of that aside, that's over a long time period. The big question for me is, how sharp is the shock? Because the sharpness of the shock is the most important thing. If this disruption happened over 30 years, people could naturally atrophy off their careers, so retire, and new talent would come in that has different skill sets, and you could morph. But if it happens within a 2-year period, you've got such an enormous disruption that actually it can be negative for the society.
Like culture shock.
Because if
a
you take the
culture
internet,
shock.
for instance, the internet took 20 years to get to mass adoption. So you had time. You had time for these things to bed in, these new
To be
technologies.
honest, AI will take 20 years. AI will be the same
But
because it's
something
about the practical application.
Do you think
something
it'll be
like
that long?
UBI
Because
as
a lot
well.
of people are talking about it, in 5 years, reaching that kind of critical mass. Do you
Yeah.
think it will still be 20 years or so?
Well, it depends on all of the use cases and all of the critical elements. You'll have an oligopoly or a monopoly situation happening with the companies that are developing the most advanced AI algorithms, because it takes billions to develop those. So that will be the equivalent of the Google and the Facebooks of our generation. And then you will find your specific divergence sets. Nodes and links is project controls and project management. You'll also have one for doctors. You'll also have one for lawyers. Like, you'll have all of these divergent sets, and they will take time to deploy and flow through.
And if you look at various industries, you already see those market leaders starting to emerge, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So in music, you've got Udio. You've got the Sonar stuff for text to video.
But this is why there's a slight concern. But this is why there's a slight concern with the productivity gains from AI, is that the wealth distribution lends more towards those who have the capital to leverage it, right? So something like
ultimately, but at the same time, the value is created on the core face. So, for example, Nodes and Links, I could argue Nodes and Links has got the most advanced AI tech in project controls. We sell it for a couple of $100 a month. Like, what actually happens is, when technologies go through the 4 stages of evolution, once you start getting to stage 3, which is mass customization, it becomes mass adopted because prices plummet. So, for example, the printing press.
Yeah.
The printing press crashed the price of a book by about 1 million times, so that individuals could then procure books. And lo and behold, the amount of books the demand for books went through the roof. So the same here. I'd go like, just take a project progress report. Okay, well, what happens if the price of a project progress report effectively crashes from, let's say, $5,000 down to $10? Well, it becomes something that then just people can consume on an ongoing basis, and it changes the form of what it is in itself. So that's actually how that mechanism will actually go about working.
Yeah, and do you think this is why a lot of the big tech companies are increasing accessibility to some of their more premium tools, like GPT-4?
Yeah, so you've got to realize the level of the battle that's being fought. So in history, if you go back 1,000 years, almost all battles were fought over geographic resources. So it was land, access, water, fertile land, minerals like gold, iron, these kinds of things. And then as we progressed into the Industrial Revolution, it was oil, coal, these. And then as we progressed into the Nuclear Revolution, it was uranium and plutonium. And then now, as we're in the digital age, it's actually data centers and connectivity. So if you look at the connectivity of the world's internet, lo and behold, the hubs of the internet are the superpowers. So you have hubs all around America, China, the UK. So all of the cables for the UK go into Cornwall and into London. It's very surprising that the world powers have the nodes of the internet in their countries. And now when it gets to AI, this is why countries like the UK and America are going so into AI, because AI is essentially a perfectly loyal working resource. If the AI is in America, Americans control it. If the AI is in the UK, Britain controls it. And if the AI is in China or Russia, they control it. So it's just a battle. It's going to be a battle of resources, and from what I see, it will progress how all other technology generally progresses, like aeronautical or rocket technology or these kinds of technology, or semiconductor technologies. Remember, there's been a ban on semiconductors between China and the US. It'll just become another, so that AI algorithms will be subject to trade embargoes, because it'll be like, you're not having our productivity algorithms.
But I heard that the UK is third behind America and China in terms of the resource they put into AI. That's got to be a good thing, right, for the UK economy.
Massive for the UK economy. you got to think like the UK ran out of significant valuable resources many generations ago. Like the last one was the coal generation, really.
Yeah, they're
We've
not North
managed,
Shore.
the government has very successfully managed to transform the economy into a high value service economy, focusing on high end manufacturing, IP, international litigation, and finance. That's really what the UK makes all of its money from. But as you go forward, you've got to think that all of those things are going to be automated in some extent with AI. So if you're not the AI superpower, you're going to lose those core advantages. So I think the government's been very clever here in understanding that that is the future of the British economy. Is I can see a situation whereby Britain is exporting workers to countries that don't have the upfront capital to build these, but they're selling them at like ours is a couple of $100 for $1 billion project. Okay, well that's totally affordable by pretty much every single country in the world. Now we're a British company, so technically the UK is exporting that AI technology to countries around the world. I think right now we're in about 33 countries. So it's like
It's a huge
that's
opportunity.
how that will work.
So, Greg, would you?
It's cannibalizing itself in some sense. It knows that this technology is going to replace a lot the economy that it's built.
It's not cannibalizing it.
Well,
It's that
probably the wrong word.
the son is overtaking the father, and the father is proud to see the son overtake the father.
A much better way of putting it.
Yeah.
And then, Greg, would you then say that so AI is not decommodifying labour; it's changing the medium in which we get this value?
Yes, it'll be, remember, like the core point, economies don't exist if people aren't in them. Economies only exist as a transference of value between people. So you can't suddenly take a huge amount of people out of a workforce. It doesn't work like that because of global competition. It's this beautiful idealized dream. There's always bad people in the world, and there's always people who want to compete. We will have to. I think we will need to change the human genome before that will become a real possibility. So if you have to have these people in the economy, then it will just change the jobs that are being done. Just like farming, just like the Industrial Revolution, version 1, version 2, version 3, version 4. Like this has happened
Just another
many
cycle.
times before. This is just, it happens every generation. It's the first time that we're experiencing it because humans don't live forever. That's the only novel thing here. It's the same as war. War goes round in the cycle of generations because people go to war, they realize it's horrible and a shit idea, and then they go, let's not do it, and then they die off, and then a new generation comes up that thinks it's all like fun and games, and then they go to war.
So the big news is nothing to see here. This is just a repeat of what's happened.
It's just a repeat. Now, that's not to say that an individual can't maximize disruption to make their own situation better. So, like, if you're genuinely a project manager who bets against AI, I think that is a risky bet. That is a very risky bet. But if you're a project manager who goes, I'm going to learn how to use this, and I'm going to be one of the first. Okay, being the first in a race is generally always a good thing to be.
Yeah, to be honest, I've seen a huge change. I've been doing when I do these talks, I do these polls, and there always used to be a few saying, "No, I'm not interested in AI. I don't see it changing anything." That's gone now. Pretty much everyone's accepting that this is going to have an impact. There's still some who don't know where to go. Don't know what the next steps are, and that's a subject for a whole other podcast. But I am, Greg, it's been a fantastic conversation. I know you've got to go soon, so we're going to wrap up very, very shortly. But is there any kind of like final words you want to say to the listeners about?
I think the final words is actually more put all of this technology aside, put all of this aside. Disruption happens every single day. So I've been trained as an entrepreneur now, and I can come up with a business idea once a day. What I'm saying is there's infinite opportunity in the world, and actually a huge amount of it is just down to the mindset that you approach it with. So what I'd actually say is forget all of this AI transformation. What I'd be asking, or what I'd be encouraging people is decide on the mindset with which you want to approach the thing that you spend the majority of your waking time trying to do. And that mindset will have the biggest influence on, how you understand AI, what you do with blockchain, what you do with all of these things, than us pontificating for an hour about what it is.
Yeah, and you're so right, the technology will change, but it's all around that. It's surely in the time that you're up and awake, you want to do something to the best of your ability. And if there's a technology that helps you do that, you should be grasping it.
And by the way, the best of your ability, people listen to this might laugh. The best of your ability is sometimes just making sure you make the bed in the morning. Like,
Yeah,
it's fine. It's a lot of tiny little things that actually become big things. So I'd be
100%,
saying, I'd be saying, okay, spend 5 minutes and learn one prompt on GPT, or spend 5 minutes and just, play with one thing. And do you know what? Treat it as a hypothesis. If it fails, you've still learned something new. So what I'd be saying is, if you could just learn one thing every single day, in 365 days, you've learned a lot of stuff.
Huge amount. And it's that consistency that's key. Keep
Consistency
going.
is key, yeah.
First time you use it, you'll be hopeless. The first time you might sit there scratching your head going, what's going on? Keep going. Because there's
and I'd also reflect on, I'd also bring an element of humility to it, because if I'm going like, okay, people have poured billions into it, millions of people think this is a good idea. If you don't think it's a good idea, is the likelihood that you're right and 1 million people are wrong, or is the likelihood that you've missed something?
Yeah. I'm going to use that one, Greg, actually. Next time someone pushes back, there's less of people pushing back. I'm definitely going to use that. So, Greg, thank you so much for your time. It's honestly always, I always feel after I've spoken to you, like I've got so much information in my head. I need to kind of write it all down somewhere, which is great that we've got it on this podcast, because I can listen back to it, and I think I will. But thank you for your time. I know you've got a baby to attend to, and we really hope that you'll come on again another time to talk. We could just listen to you talking for hours.
Really good. Well, so many questions.
Be my pleasure. Be my pleasure. Let's see if the audience like it. If people at home like it, give it a like, give it a share. And if enough people do, then I can come on, because it means that I'm not wasting people's time.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Greg. As we wrap up this episode, we'd like to give you a sneak peek into next week. We'll be joined by Dale Fung of Movar, an inspiration to many, including myself. Dale runs the amazing Project Chatter podcast, and we're thrilled to have him share his insights with us next week. Quick reminder that the 5th and 6th of June marks Digital Construction Week, so stay tuned to our Project Flux socials for updates and insights. And on the 6th of June, we'll also be covering the APM conference, where we'll provide some live commentary. Lastly, don't forget that on Wednesday, the 19th of June, we have the PDA Task Force meetup at the Gleeds offices in London. The registration note for this event will be included in the show notes. So thank you for joining us today. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review in your chosen podcast player, as it really helps us spread the message to more people. See you next time.